India win. Unbelievable scenes here at the Bull Ring. India, the world champions.
What if that catch had been dropped? What if there was a team of only left-handers? Or what if the rain didn't play spoil sport in a World Cup defining match?
The beauty of cricket lies in the small margins that not only define the result of the game, but also tournaments, legacies, and the entire business of cricket.
Welcome to the River Sweep Show, where we discuss the alternate realities of the cricketing world, hosted by two delusional cricket fans, myself Suyash and my co-host Abhinav.
We have a passion for stats and a vivid imagination. Expect deep analysis garnished with our personal biases and hot takes. Join us as we explore alternate realities and dissect those game changing moments that could have altered cricket history and narratives forever.
This is the cricket podcast you have been waiting for. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the River Sweep Show. I'm your host Suyash, and joining me is my co-host Abhinav. How's it going, AB?
All good, SS. I just came to Almaty on a rather impromptu trip. So, yeah, having a vacation and recording a podcast on cricket. It's going fairly well, I would say. What about you?
It's getting cold out here where I'm living, so it's always nice to have the warmth of cricket around us. Enjoying the India-Bangladesh T20I series and some excellent batting display by our batters. Some of the viewers and listeners have been reaching out to me, asking us the story behind the name, the River Sweep Show. And I believe that you have something to share with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Reverse sweep is a very unorthodox take on a rather orthodox cricketing shot, and it is very bold and unexpected. With this podcast, we aim to do something similar. We want to challenge the traditional cricket narratives and look at it from very unique and surprising angles, just like a well executed reverse sweep shot. And the reason why we also wanted to talk about this in this episode is because today's discussion is going to be very much related to the reverse sweep. One, because this is the first time when we are looking at a hypothetical situation, creating our alternate realities. And second, today's hero, the protagonist, the main protagonist, is himself a very good proponent of the reverse sweep shot. So, SS, do you want to tell our listeners more about what we will be discussing today?
Yeah, I think we have lightly touched upon it when I was telling about what's going on in my life is watching T20I cricket between India and Bangladesh. I do not enjoy a lot of T20Is. For me, a hot take, if for any audience who likes hot takes, is that I firmly believe that T20I should not exist. T20 should be a franchise game and only World Cup should happen, but that's a discussion for another day. We were looking at India, Bangladesh, and the historic record between the two teams. It has been fairly lopsided. India and Bangladesh have played 17 times together. India has a 16-1 record, but a couple of occasions it has gotten really close. And one of the most iconic one is the Nidahas Trophy final in 2018, where Dinesh Karthik, or as lovingly known as DK, hit a last ball six of Shumo Sarkar to win us the final and the tournament. For the uninitiated listeners and viewers, Nidahas Trophy has happened like a couple of times. Once in '98 as well. It happens. Nidahas in Sinhalese apparently means freedom, so it's like an independence Cup event that happens on the 50th and then happened in the 70th anniversary of Sri Lanka's independence. India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh were the participants in the 2018 edition of it. India reached the final fairly comfortably. And as I mentioned, Dinesh Karthik's exploits made us win that final. And today, what we are going to do as part of the Reverse Sweep Show is look at certain what-if scenarios around that final and what happened with Dinesh Karthik, with Shumo Sarkar, with Rohit Sharma captaining probably the first time in an Indian team in a tournament, and all the alternate realities that could have offshot from that. So this is today's episode. But since we are doing it for the first time for the audience, we also want to list down a certain format by which we will go about this breakdown. And for this, I would pass it to you, AB, to help the audience understand this part.
Yeah, sure. So what we intend to do is we'll start off from a more macro discussion. We'll see how the India versus Bangladesh rivalry in white ball cricket and T20Is has evolved over the years, maybe around the last decade or two. After that, we look at how the teams were positioned going into the Nidahas Trophy around that particular time. What was the T20I makeup of the Indian team, Bangladeshi team? And then we go into more details around what actually happened in the Nidahas Trophy final leading up to that last ball finish that DK did. Once we are done discussing that, we will then move into our own versions of what if. We'll discuss what we feel could have happened had DK come up the batting order and how would that have impacted, one, the result of the match, two, the legacies that these players have.
All right. So that's the breakdown for everyone. And without wasting any more time, let's start setting up the overall macro context around these situations happen. So in the introduction, I already mentioned that India and Bangladesh have played around 17 or 18 T20Is, and it's a fairly lopsided result. But maybe growing up, probably India Bangladesh is one rivalry we have seen it from the very start. So what has been your memories, the big takeaways, the big moments for you, and also not just from T20I but from the overall cricketing perspective?
Yeah, growing up, whenever we saw a match between subcontinental teams, and if it was Bangladesh was facing India, then we always felt that it's going to be an easy match, and India is the favorites going into that particular match. With Pakistan and Sri Lanka, it was different, but with Bangladesh, we assumed that we will win the match. But the first time when I really remember when the match got very close and the loss against Bangladesh really pinched me as an Indian cricket team fan was when they eventually knocked us out in the 2007 World Cup, which was a 50-over World Cup. And then Bangladesh had a few good years of cricket, a lot of good players that they found. They were able to bring them together as a team and give stiff competition to the Indian team over the years. 2011, although India made a very, very, very strong statement in the 50-over World Cup against Bangladesh, we were able to win convincingly. But then later on, in the middle of the decade, around 2016 and then 2018, that was a time when we had quite a few very close finishes. What about you, SS? What are your takes on this?
Yeah, I mean, still, I know we are going to discuss about the T20 rivalry between the two nations, but for me, one of the saddest is one that you touched upon. Tamim Iqbal coming down the track, hitting Zahir Khan, had to wake up late into the night to watch the World Cup happening in West Indies and India getting knocked out. And that was the point where the Neighbours started becoming a bit noisier, the Bangladeshi guys. And as you said, I think that was a time when all the young players started coming in. Tamim, Shakib, Mashrafe was the leader. Then you had some more guys like Mushfiqur Rahim, Ahmedullah coming in. So there was a good spot of Bangladesh coming in. And there was a sense in cricketing world that they need that big breakthrough. It was 2016 T20 World Cup where Hardik Pandya came in and bowled that last over. It could have gone either way. And then we are going to, of course, discuss about Nidahas. But those were some moments where we felt that, okay, this team is going to become stronger as Asian cricket becomes stronger. And it will definitely pose a bigger challenge to us. And also, I also felt that in early 2010s, after winning the one-day World Cup, but also just negating that fact, T20 setup, India, IPL, it was going through kind of a flux and people were still not very sure about what's happening. So what's your take on the Indian cricketing when it comes to T20Is and the makeup of the team and the squad? What was your feel about it?
So if you ask me about it, I do feel that because IPL had picked up by then, there was so much of domestic talent which was coming through. But if you look at the national team, if you look at the final 11 that were playing in a particular T20I match, whether it be a tri-series or maybe a World Cup, then the team wasn't very stable. There was a lot of experimentation that was going in, and it was actually going through a lot of flux. There were lots of new players coming in, going out, a lot of players being rested. So the team combination was never fixed. Even we have seen a lot of players being rested. If the captain is rested, in this particular case when we talk about VK being rested, then an alternate captain being the leader of the side. So there was a lot of flux going on in the team, a lot of new players being tested. Plus, the selectors were showing, like, we were giving long ropes to some players were coming in and going out immediately. So a lot of experimentation going on. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think there were multiple factors. I think the IPL was bringing up newer talents, and the flavor of the season would be like a shot. It was like a mango season. You had like 3-4 months, and if you were not doing well, even if you get ropes, but by the time the next IPL comes, some new players coming in, and it kind of has gone till to this date. In fact, also I feel even though T20 cricket was at the center with the IPL, Indian team was always seemingly a step behind the elite T20I teams, and we were always playing catch up. Virat Kohli was the greatest T20I player, batter alongside ABD and Chris Gale probably during those years, but still India as a unit and on its sheer talent and capability purposes, we will still reach the finals of the later stages of T20 World Cups. But after 2007, we never were able to win. And you can attribute it to multiple factors, conditions, preparedness, and all that. But we were trying a lot of players. And it was that era where also a moment where we would want to look at if we could get better alternatives to Hardik, or Dhoni was kind of whittling down in his career slowly and surely, first from Test cricket and then probably from ODI and T20I. So there were a lot of chopping and changes, and we never had a set strategy and set pattern. We were always behind the trend in T20I cricket. That was my big takeaway. And one of the positions was the wicket keeper finisher who can come in at 6 and 7 and do the job for us. And this is where one of our so-called protagonists of the Nidahas Trophy, Dinesh Karthik, and his career comes in. What is your sense of Dinesh Karthik and his career coming into that Nidahas and from an overall perspective?
So from an overall perspective, I do feel DK definitely, given all the talent that he has, had a rather poor timing in his career. Had he been 10 years before, he would have been a superstar for India, because India was actually struggling to get those good keeper batsmen, right? And any good team at that time would have, and we were also discussing about that, would have been happy with having a keeper batter who could average around 30. And DK could have given them a much better option than that in the batting lineup. He could have batted anywhere. But unfortunately, he was there in the times of Dhoni, and he had a very, very patchy career with the Indian team. He played an odd test here and there, played ODIs here and there, came in the team, came out of the team, had his moments, but then definitely had a very patchy career. What do you think?
Yeah, I sometimes argue with my friends about his test career. I think he's slightly or majorly underrated. That, okay, somebody can make a big point that he was the test opener alongside Wasim Jafar when we last won a test series in England. And he was that spunky guy picking a fight in the jelly beans incident with Kevin Peterson and the English bowlers. He debuted before MSD in white ball cricket as well. But then when MSD came in, we all knew that he's going to last a long time. So even though DK continued to play ODI cricket till early 2010, he won a Asia Cup final, I remember, in 2010 as well. In T20Is from 2010 to 17, he was completely gone. I remember him being part of the 2007 T20 World Cup winning squad, but he was chopped after a very poor batting performance and the kind of form he was showing. So his career for me is his career in two parts. One, the spunkier younger DK who was inconsistent but played a pivotal role in a test series, never could make his place in ODI, and then something changed in him. Maybe the Abhishek Nair effect, maybe it's the wisdom of experience, that then the second swing of his career came in after 2016-17. And then that's what has probably got him in terms of remembrance, in terms of fans, that
and it was
they
probably
look back and they think.
And it was probably this 2018 Nidahas Trophy final that actually gave him the second lease of life with the Indian team, right?
And the recency bias is so massive that people forget the first part of his career. People also seem to forget that this was the time when Dhoni and in white ball cricket, but Kohli had taken over the reins from it. But there was also a time that Kohli's workload needs to be managed and the rest equation and everything. And this was Rohit's moment. So, what do you think about from that perspective? Do you remember Rohit being captaining the Nidahas Trophy? And what did you think initially when you heard that? Because we had seen Rohit in MI for doing great things, but Rohit as India captain, what were your initial thoughts? Do you remember anything of it?
Yeah, I always felt that Rohit was living behind the shadow of Virat Kohli. Because if you remember, this was back in 2018, and Rohit hadn't even, like as a batter, hadn't lived up to his full potential for India. Maybe that changed around the 2019 World Cup when he had those 500s in the World Cup, and people would consider him at the same level as Virat Kohli in terms of batting. And even in terms of captaincy, Rohit came in the picture only when Virat Kohli was rested or was injured. Rohit was a fairly good captain, as we all know from his MI time, but then getting that limelight or being known for being a very intuitive captain like MSD, that was something which people didn't know and didn't realize. Probably this was one of those first instances when Rohit sent DK down the batting order, maybe first instances of Rohit showing his intuitive cricketing mind. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I think for me, there wasn't a question on Rohit's captaincy acumen because he had shown enough of that at Mumbai Indians. Okay, MI were also very solid organization. They won multiple IPLs, but you could see that he had good equation with his players, laid back as well. But he could also get competitive on the ground as well when things were not going his way. So you knew that when time comes, he would not just be completely relaxed. He would be proactive in his decision making as well. But yeah, it's a different kettle of fish when you go from captaining your franchise side to your national side, and especially if the national side is India. So it was interesting. I'm looking forward, but I always had, and it's okay. Hindsight is the best side, but I always felt that he could be a very good captain for India.
And also,
Yeah.
And also a challenge with being a standby captain is that you always have new players into the team. You don't know how they will perform in those crunch moments. You have to trust them, also have to judge their abilities and have to read the game situations. So I think that was also an additional challenge for Rohit in that particular series.
Yeah, and then you always feel in India decisions, at least from media and fans, come quicker, if not from selectors and from the management. That if a team doesn't perform well, you lose a final versus Bangladesh Nidahas Trophy. What impact does it have on your captaincy going forward? So when the next standby comes in, maybe Shikhar Dhawan captains. He did captain, but Shikhar Dhawan used to captain a different kind of tournaments and not Nidahas Trophy. But that could have played a role.
Now that we have spoken so much about what was happening with the India team, and we have also gotten very close to that Nidahas Trophy, SS, can you please run us through what were the events that actually led to that point where DK got that opportunity to finish the final for us?
Yeah, as I touched earlier, India reached the final quite comfortably in Nidahas. We won, I think, 3 matches out of 4. And then it was a matter of I think if you look at the pre-match odds, India were heavy favorites going into it. Colombo, Premadasa surface is always considered to be a bit slower, but if you can get in, you can make runs. And when Bangladesh had some jitters, Washington Sundar and Yuzi bowled beautifully, I think. So it was that the spinners were ruling the roost. Jadev and Shardul and Vijay Shankar were, let's say, middling in their performance, but India did enough with the ball that even though there were a couple of good knocks, Mehdi Hasan Miraz came in later on to just accelerate the runs. That Bangladesh made a good total, but the overwhelming sense was India should be able to chase. Bangladesh were 15 runs short. And then we come on to the second part of the innings. But because I know that you recently rewatched the game, did anything stand out from the first part of the innings for you when it came to Bangladesh batting?
Yeah, I think our spinners bowled really well. And Yuzi Chahal also mentioned that the pitch was dry, and hence what was very important was for them to keep changing their speeds. And if you also see the statistics, both our spinners combined, Washi and Yuzi, 8 overs, they gave 38 runs and picked up 4 wickets.
Mm-hmm.
And it was our pacers actually, Shardul and Vijay Shankar, specifically who struggled a fair bit. Shardul gave 45 in his four, Vijay Shankar gave 48 in his four. So fairly expensive. And from a batting perspective, it was Sabir Rahman's 77 of 50, which propelled Bangladesh to 166. And one more point that I want to mention here is that if India chased that in that point of time, would have been the highest chase in a T20 final. So it definitely was a steep task, not very easy given that it's a final of a tri-series, a young team chasing. And when it comes to the second innings, India had a quick start but lost wickets. So 32 for 2, losing Dhawan and Raina in quick succession. Then there was a good partnership between Rohit and KL Rahul. So KL Rahul had a good cameo. Rohit was playing really well. So when Rohit got out, it was, I think, 98 for 4 in 13.2 overs. So India had an upper hand, is what I would say. And even the commentators at that point, we were talking about this, felt that Bangladesh were 15 short, given how Rohit was timing the ball. But after Rohit
I think Rohit was really excellent throughout the tournament. I think he was leading by example when it came to batting, and these were the purple years of Rohit really showing his class.
And then after Rohit got out, we had Manish Pandey and we had Vijay Shankar coming in, and both of them were struggling big time. And I think it was also both of them putting pressure onto each other because they could not score at a fast pace. They could not keep up with the run rate, that they eventually batted India into a position where it was Bangladesh's game to lose.
And it was interesting that, as you mentioned, it was the Indian spinners who were ruling the roost when Bangladesh were batting. But here there was Mustafizur, and I remember Rubel Hussain, who was always a fighting cricketer, bringing out his best versus India, picking up fights. I think he gave like 3 overs for 13 runs, and really stifling India in the middle overs. And then even though Mehdi Hassan Miraz, who's now considered like a really good bowler, he I think gave like 17 runs off his 1 over.
And then he was never brought again. And that was also a reason why Shami Sarkar had to bowl 3 overs, the sixth bowler for Bangladesh.
Indeed. And since you mentioned Mustafizur's famous over, that was considered to one of the best overs of the tournament when he gave, it was almost a wicket median or a leg by.
India needed 35 of 3 overs of 18 balls. Mustafizur bowled a wicket maiden, just one leg by of that over. So the equation came down to 34 of 12. So he kind of drastically changed the odds in favor of Bangladesh. And the last wicket he took was Manish Pandey. And then, as we know it, that brought our man.
That brought our man DK rise and shine. I would have loved to look at the betting odds at that point of time. When the 19th over was about to start, Rubel Hussain 3 for 13, all the momentum with Bangladesh. They could smell a win. This is their moment if they can win. Probably the history changes for them. But then DK has some other plans. And I remember that over very, very well. I think there were some excellent shots. I think I think that was the third delivery when he uses the crease so brilliantly and goes over square leg. There was one over cow corner as well on the second ball. And then on the final ball as well. He misses in the middle, but still is able to score 22 runs off Rubel Hussain. And that would have completely shell-shocked Bangladesh, that their premier bowler who had bowled so well in the tournament, so well in the match, and you felt that, and people often say the 19th over is so important because if you can get the equation to 20 of the last over, even if you have Shumo Sarkar being given the ball, you would then back the bowling team to win. But then 22 runs of that over, confusing the management who to give the last over to, meaning 12 of the last over, and the management decides to go with Shumo Sarkar and not Mehdi Hassan Miraz, the spinner. And then the entire ball game changes.
I actually feel that Bangladesh did most of the things right. I mean, they gave Mustafizur Rahman the third last over, and he executed, he delivered. The second last over to a bowler who was bowling so well, 3 overs, the 13 runs before, Rubel Hussain. I mean, that is what the captain can do, right? He can just throw the ball to the bowler
Yeah,
that
you
he.
can make the best decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, but then of course DK, against the momentum of the game, hit 22 of that over, and then the equation comes down to 12 of the final over, right? And
Yeah.
then
12 of the last over.
the ball to Soumya Sarkar, because he doesn't want to give the over to Mendias and Miraz, which is also explainable. Why would you give the last over to a spinner unless
Unless you are Rashid Khan, Sunil Narayan,
or
probably.
you are the Pakistan team captain?
Yeah, we are not taking names over here.
Not taking names. But then coming to the match situation, last over, 12 needed of 6, Soumya Sarkar with the ball, and India has Vijay Shankar batting. Vijay Shankar, who was not able to make connection with the ball, was not scoring at a fast pace, was really,
But
really
you would still back, right? 80% you would say India wins this one.
80%. Yeah, after that penultimate over, we backed Vijay Shankar to score 12 of the last over. The first ball, Soumya Sarkar, you can see pressure visible on his face, the way he's talking to his captain, his other fielders. You can see the pressure there. So Bangladesh right now is under pressure. And the first ball is also a wide. So the equation changes to 11 of 6.
Yeah.
The second ball, Vijay Shankar misses, as he has been doing throughout his innings. The next ball, he at least manages to get a single. And
And I
DK.
remember the Premdasa crowd going for it because this is probably the first time Premdasa crowd is really supporting India and not Bangladesh. All the Nagin dance shenanigans, which we not get into, but the entire crowd really cheered on that single because they knew DK is coming on the strike.
Yeah. And then DK also was able to manage a single. So that brings Vijay Shankar back on the strike. And then one good shot that Vijay Shankar was able to manage. He was able to squeeze the ball between gully and point to manage a four. So the equation came
Yeah.
down 5 runs of 2 balls. You would say that the batting team, given the range hitting that players have these days, would
You need one. Yeah, you need one shot.
one
Basically.
shot.
Yeah.
And that is what Vijay Shankar went for. I think it was a slower ball by the bowler. Vijay Shankar tried to hit it out of the ground, miscued the shot, and got caught in the deep. And the pressure also showing on the Bangladeshi fielders. They juggled the catch and were just able to take it. And that is where another key moment of the match, because the batters had crossed, it was DK back on strike. But had it been as per the rules of today's game, DK would have remained at the non-strikers end. He would not have found himself at the strikers end.
Yeah, that is just crazy to think of. I think DK owes his entire broadcasting career and his Sky contract to that single rule of ICC.
And probably that also points to DK's destiny of finishing the match for India.
Yeah.
And
What were your emotions going into the last ball? Did you think? Because to be really honest, I thought that we have lost this game.
yeah, I mean last ball you need 5 to win. The only way you can win is by hitting a 6, right? But then even if
Yeah.
you hit a 4, you can at least take the match into super over. So
Yeah.
what I was thinking is if DK can somehow manage to hit a 4, but then
Yeah.
again, the odds of that happening are so rare. And then as we saw it, Soumya Sarkar came with the ball and DK was able to hit everything.
Yeah.
He covers
Yeah.
6.
Yeah. For me, the happy scenario was that we hit a 4. He hits a 4, and I think he's in good form. And if it comes to 1 over shootout, we back our boys to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have Rohit Sharma coming in again in the kind of form that he was. We would have backed ourselves in the super over. But then DK managed that, ensured that we didn't get the game to the super over. He hit that.
Yeah, terrible delivery, I must say. It was over pitched and had a lot of width on offer, and DK could really swing. And yeah, and in fact, when the ball was in the air, I was thinking, okay, it's a 4. I didn't think that it will go 2 millimeters above the line for a
It
6. It
wasn't a
was
very
crazy.
high shot, right? It was just the
No,
distance that DK managed to get.
yes. So it was quite crazy. I mean, the scenes after the game finished, everyone was ecstatic. It was a big win. You could see it on the faces of BK and Rohit. It was incredible, and it leads us to so many questions of what ifs and the hypotheticals. And I think this is the perfect time for us to dive in. And one of the first question that comes, because it also happened in an earlier game, which I think you will allude to, is that given the situation, given how DK in the last 2-3 years had been performing in domestic cricket for Gujarat Lions in the IPL, he had shown that leadership quality, getting his team out of tough situations. What is your take? DK coming up the order, maybe ahead of Manish, maybe ahead of Vijay Shankar. What is your perspective? What is your what if on this?
So, yeah, as you rightly pointed out, DK was batting at number 6 throughout the tournament, and this particular match was actually demoted to number 7. If I look at DK's T20I career, he has batted through the batting lineup. He has opened for India number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Most of his matches at 6 and 7, though, and his best records have been at this position.
Yeah.
Although the average that he has, the strike rate that he has, doesn't change much between 6 and 7. So I still feel that, DK, given the potential he has, should have batted at number 6 ahead of Vijay Shankar. Because even in the earlier matches in the Nidahas Trophy, Vijay Shankar was coming in after DK. And the way team management looked at Vijay Shankar was that he will give you 4 overs and then comes in and hits the ball out of the park towards the end of the innings.
Especially considering in that squad we had the finishers lacking because Virat was rested, Dhoni was rested, Hardik was rested. So you had like a Hardik proxy as Vijay Shankar being tried out with the bowling because Shardul is more like a bowling all-rounder. And DK doing the Dhoni job at 6 probably as a finisher who is elite.
Absolutely. And also we saw that with both Manish Pandey and Vijay Shankar when they were building up that partnership and eventually getting us into trouble. That scoring was actually tough, and what it required was a batter with more smartness, more guile, ability to use the crease, ability to move across the wickets, having that more of a 360 kind of a game to manipulate the field and score runs. And I think that is where DK is very, very handy. He has all those skills. And I believe if DK had come in before Vijay Shankar, the partnership between Manish Pandey and DK would, one, have been much faster because DK would have been able to score runs. 2, it would have lifted a lot of pressure off of Manish Pandey because when both the batters are struggling, you're eventually compounding that pressure. So that pressure would have been relieved. And I feel that DK would have brought us much closer to the finishing line. What's your take? What's your take?
I also agree that DK at that position, 6 and 7, had been doing pretty well. If you look at the statistics, I mean, at 4, for example, at 3, for example, or even at 5, the averages kind of at all positions remain the same for him in both T20Is and IPL before and after the event. But the strike rates do matter and strike rates change. And you have 150, 160 occasionally as a strike rate as well, while when he's batting higher up the order, it's 120, 130. So I don't think it would have been prudent for him to come above Manish Pandey. So I think Manish Pandey stays where he is. But yeah, I would have also gone ahead with DK coming ahead of Vijay Shankar, as was the plan or as was the team management showing that to all of us in the earlier games. My take on the situation is because Mustafizur and Rubel were bowling really well, especially Mustafizur. And DK, when comes earlier and considering the wickets had fell and it's a final, would not have gone ahead completely bonkers. I think he would have taken much more time to settle alongside Manish. And they would have anyways. India made 113th over and probably 100 to 150. It was, again, not a rapid progression. I think it would have remained pretty much the same. And when the pressure would have built on, he would have tried to take on a Mustafizur. And I feel that may not have worked out in the fashion that it did work out. It was a freak innings by Dinesh Karthik at the very end that won us the game. So even if he had accelerated a bit more, when eventually Vijay Shankar would have had to come out to bat, and probably with Washington Sundar, it would have been too much for him to do, left too much. So even though I back the what if that if Dinesh Karthik would have come earlier, that would have been the right decision to do. I still don't think that India would have won the match and we would have fell short. Do you think that India would have won the match in your case in point that if Dinesh Karthik comes up?
So rationally, if I have to think about it, then I agree with you that DK should have come in at 6. That would have been the right and the more practical thing to do as a captain. I do believe that the partnership between DK and Manish Pandey would have been a little faster, taking India much closer to the finish line. And then I also agree that DK would have gotten out. And this is where I'm playing out my imagination and my delusion comes into play. Um, just to add a bit of drama, I imagine that DK tries to play the same shot over deep covers, but gets out this time, uh, bringing in Vijay Shankar on the crease, trying to finish the match. But I feel that DK and Manish Pandey by that time would have done enough to ensure that Vijay Shankar and co don't have a lot on their hands to do, so they are able to take India across the finish line. So in my hypothetical situation, DK comes up, manages a good partnership with Manish Pandey, and then eventually gets out. But then Vijay Shankar, Washington are able to finish the match for India. So India wins, but not in that dramatic a fashion. And of course, we lose out on that iconic 6 that DK hit, which
Yeah, so in both our stories, we lose out on that iconic 6, and all the great amount of money and contracts that DK would have brought would not have happened in our situation, because it would have been a boring situation. Because in your case, a much more 19th over win. In my case, he holds out on a Mustafizo delivery, leaves a bit too much, and India lose by 5 runs or 6 runs, because Shumar Sarkar is a bit more, in a much better place when he has to defend 20 runs and not 12 runs. So that's our take when it comes to the immediate what if, the biggest question. But there are certain protagonists and antagonists in this entire play. For me, the antagonist, if people look at the history, it would be Shumar Sarkar from Bangladesh side, and it would be Vijay Shankar from Indian side. Who are the main protagonists from your side, if you think of it?
I agree with the antagonists. And when it comes to the protagonists, of course, DK is the main protagonist of the story. I also feel Rohit Sharma, with his intuitive captaincy, demoting DK to send him as a finisher, is another protagonist in this entire story.
Okay, so let's take up those cases. Shumar Sarkar has had a decent career. Didn't play in the latest series that has been going on. He's around 31 now, but primarily known as a batter. But maybe if there were 20 runs to defend, and he would have defended, the headlines wouldn't have gone too much into the details, but would have said to Shumar Sarkar bowled the last over, won the game for Bangladesh. Probably would be known more for his all-round skill. Would have even got an IPL contract, and would have never played an IPL game, but would have got a contract, but would have been having a better PR for him, not the PR, because that's what, ask any Indian cricket watcher, say something about Shumar Sarkar, they will say that last final over. They wouldn't think any of his ODI innings or T20I innings. Yeah, so I really think that Shumar Sarkar would have been looked at as an all-round option by Bangladesh more often and not. I haven't checked the records, but I don't think he would bowl in such kind of pressure situations in a big game. And looking back at big game, India-Bangladesh, we all remember that Hardik Pandya's last over in the T20 World Cup game, in which we were able to get out of the jail with Dhoni running behind and getting hit in the stumps. Okay, there's a capability difference and skill set difference between the two, but Shumar Sarkar would have gotten lesser bollocks from fans of all kinds if he was able to save the game. The other one is Vijay Shankar from India side. What is your take on Vijay Shankar's career and Vijay Shankar's what if?
So in my alternate reality SS, Vijay Shankar was able to finish the match for India, was able to get India over the line, but of course not in as dramatic a fashion as DK. So India continues to look at Vijay Shankar as a bowling option who can give them 4 overs of the ball in a T20I match, plus as a batter who comes lower middle order and is a finisher for Team India. Of course, given the fact that his batting abilities, his 360-degree game, his shots are not as diverse as someone like Hardik Pandya. His 6 hitting capability isn't as good as Pandya's. And of course, his bowling skills aren't a match for Pandya. So he remains an understudy for Pandya. And he stays in the contention for some time and then probably fades away when other players like Nitish Reddy now come in or Shivam Dubey come in. But he does not become a contender for a number 4 position in the
Yeah.
2019 World Cup. So that is my take on what would have happened with Vijay Shankar's career. Probably that would have also prompted him to focus more on his bowling. So right now in IPLs, he doesn't even bowl. He gets subbed
Yeah,
out.
it doesn't even bowl.
So that probably would not have happened with him. He continues focusing on his bowling because that is what is keeping him in the team. But eventually, I don't think he would have become a consistent part of the team. He eventually fades out, but then also doesn't become a contention for number 4 spot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the best case scenario would have been that he lives in Shivam Dubey's world. Shivam Dubey will go down in history as the guy who played the World T20 final, even though he got a lot of bollocks through the tournament. But he's a world champion. He can say that. So the best case scenario for him would be that whenever Hardik is not available for any reason, he comes in. He doesn't have the long levers that Shivam Dubey commands, but he's a decent enough batter. Has got good orthodox shots as well, and especially his inside out over shot. I really admire in him. But yeah, he's not a good enough bowler for T20I cricket, and that's probably why uh, the Gujarat franchise also doesn't bowl him. So I agree with you. I think he eventually fades away, but does have a longer India career, I would say. And that's also a testament. We can look from the 2019 One Day World Cup. He was part of the team and he did play the game. So it's not as if the Indian team management did not trust his capabilities, but he would just have got a longer rope in T20I cricket as well for India. But now coming to the big protagonists, Dinesh Karthik. Um, what is your take? There are a lot of things about his career that have unfolded in the second wind. If or without this event, what do you think?
So in my alternate reality again, as I said, DK comes up top, has a good partnership with Manish Pandey, which eventually leads India to win the match. But then the iconic moment that Indian fans remember him by. So whenever I think about DK, I remember that 6 that he hit over deep covers. We don't have that, which means that the most impactful moment of a player's career that DK loses. So probably his impact for the Indian team that goes down, the very moment of time that people remember him for, that gets lost. So maybe he has a lesser run with the Indian team. He comes in as a finisher probably because he has all those abilities, but for the franchise teams. So for RCB, he keeps playing those impactful knocks that he played eventually. But then for India, there are other finishers who would have been fast track. Probably Rishabh Pant would have played ahead of him. Hardik
Yeah.
Pandya would have played that role of a finisher. Or probably India would have explored some other options. But my version of alternate reality is that DK's career with Team India is much shorter. And that also means that his broadcasting career will be substantially better than his career in blue. And that is
Mm.
my take on it. What's your version?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. So we kind of agree on one part that irrespective whether it was a good decision, logical decision or not, DK coming down the order below Vijay Shankar worked out for him. He had that famous 6. He had got that massive momentum. This is what people are going to always remember him for what happened on the pitch. And I completely agree with it because even in my version of the alternate reality, he eventually gets out trying to accelerate and trying to get India closer because Manish Pandey uh, is not able to get a move on, and Mustafizur foxes basically Dinesh Karthik, and India loses the game. I don't think Dinesh Karthik would have borne the brunt for it, uh, even though because they were like bigger, I think scapegoats, so to say, over here. Probably Manish Pandey would have, and Manish Pandey did. I do think that Dinesh Karthik would continue to have a decent IPL career, would not have commanded massive bucks that he commanded during all the IPL auctions after it. He would continue to be respected as a person who came about trying to still, living in Dhoni's shadow. He famously says after winning the Nidahas Trophy that when he's asked about his finishing prowess, he says that he's still a student in a university where Dhoni has already topped. So I think he lives under that shadow. Uh, but he carves a decent rest of his IPL career. Doesn't get all the accolades that he does get in reality. Broadcasting wise, I think he's a well-spoken guy. Probably doesn't get the Sky contract, but he does IPL commentary and all that.
Sense
But
of
one of my
passion.
big predictions, yeah, probably doesn't have bag full of suits and shirts that he goes around with. My one of my big long-term prediction of reality is that in the next 5 years he will become a mentor of an IPL team. That doesn't happen in this alternate reality which I am talking about. So Dinesh Karthik will be remembered as an upgrade on Samir Dighe, Vijay Daya, MSK Prasad, probably an upgrade on Nayan Mungia as well, but will fall way way back from where he is right now because of that inning. So in hindsight, what Rohit Sharma did or whatever did for whatever reason, it worked out. In our alternate reality, he kinds of has a decent career but doesn't get to the stardom that he has right now. So that's my big side on Dinesh Karthik. But talking about Rohit, you identified him also as another winner or protagonist out of it. What do you think from a captaincy side of it in your alternate reality, your predictions?
Captaincy side, I feel that, okay, so if we talk about a captain, it's a very team internal situation. So the team would know what a captain is like. The team management would know what a captain is like. So regardless of whether DK gets demoted or not, people would know what kind of a captain Rohit Sharma is. Plus, we had also seen his captaincy from his time with MI. And of course, as I said, it's a very different ball game when it comes to international cricket. But then still, I feel after Virat Kohli fades out as a captain or the captaincy gets taken away from him in some formats and he steps down from the other formats, Rohit Sharma would have been the next captain in line. And I think that would have happened regardless. But one thing
Yeah.
which the fans would have taken a long time to realize was how intuitive a captain Rohit Sharma is. I probably think that after MSD, Rohit Sharma is the most intuitive captain that India has had in quite a long time. And that realization for the fans would have taken a much longer time.
Yeah.
But he would still continue to have that captaincy career because you have so many data points across the years, so many opportunities when he gets to captain. So I think just from a fandom perspective, it takes time to pick up, but rest all stays the same for Rohit Sharma for me.
I think I agree on most of it what you said. I think all the Viratians and Rohitians fandom that is there on Twitter, they would have had a thing up their sleeve whenever the conversation gets brought in that if Rohit wasn't able to guide India to the Nidahas Trophy win, because people know that he has been a successful captain because of his IPL stature, but as I said, it's a different kettle of fish when you do it for India and you don't win the first tournament. And bilaterals have a very short memory span when it comes to fans. This was a triangular tournament where people remembers. Above that, it's only Champions Trophies, World Cups, and probably that's it in T20Is. And T20Is probably only have Asia Cup. It doesn't even have Champions Trophy. So it would have had a dent on Rohit's confidence as a captain, but I think mid to long term, I think he remains, he would have anyways been given the reins and he would have done well and probably still have won the World Cup as we did. So that's our story on Rohit.
Lots of criticism, although, right? Rohit would have faced a lot of criticism. And maybe it impacts the ability to try out new players and experiment with the team combinations, at least in the short term.
Indeed. In the short term, yes. But I think we both are in the code that mid to long term, Rohit remains captain and becomes a successful captain for Team India.
Okay, so we discussed about what happens in the match. We discussed about all our protagonists and antagonists. But then coming back to the bigger theme about India versus Bangladesh rivalry, we spoke about the lopsided record that India and Bangladesh have had, with India winning most of the matches. What do you think happens in your alternate reality?
This is the most interesting part. There were a couple of moments in the rivalry, as I mentioned, the Hardik World T20 game last over, and then now this Nidahas one. And I believe either of those flips could have impacted this rivalry. Also, Bangladesh's demeanor and confidence when coming to such matches in the future. So if we talk specifically about the Nidahas one, if they would have been able to pull out, They might have not been able to win so many games against India still, because India is a beast in terms of organization, in terms of planning, in terms of player talent pool, IPL and all that. India would have still continued to dominate their rivalry. Maybe they would have won a couple of games, Bangladesh here and there. But I do feel, in an overall sense, that Bangladesh would have performed much better in bigger tournaments, would have beaten non-Asian teams and even Asian teams. Just helps the confidence of all the players involved, and also the players from the outside watching in, the fans, the young players, everything. So it would have made definitely a Bangladesh into a better T20I outfit and a better international cricketing outfit, even though the rivalry dynamics between India and Bangladesh would not have changed substantially. That's my take.
Actually, just adding on to that point, Bangladeshis are very passionate cricket watchers and cricket fans, but then a win like that would have really increased or improved their fandom for the team.
Yeah.
Bangladesh cricket team would have had much more passionate fans, which would have again had a double impact on their cricket.
Yeah, it might have worked as a butterfly effect on them, especially in the white ball cricket, galvanized them as an outfit against big teams in big moments.
Yeah, but in my version of alternate reality SS, since India wins the match convincingly against Bangladesh, so Bangladesh doesn't even get that sniff of victory that they did get in that final in around the 18th over. They don't get that. They go back home thinking that India definitely was the better team and they cannot win against India in those crunch moments still.
Yes.
So I believe that would have slightly made the gulf between India and Bangladesh bigger, at least in the short term.
Which is worse for Bangladesh, because at least it took them to the last ball. They would have at least got something that became close.
So at least in the short term, that gulf would have been wider. Long term, we all know right now the gulf is massive. We saw it in the match yesterday.
Yeah, probably the only win that Bangladesh has in the T20 against India, even that would not have happened in your reality.
Yeah, it would have been a clean record for India then.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that wraps it up. But before we go, we like to be accountable. So 30 seconds for each of us to wrap up our what if, what could have happened. AB, passing it to you, 30 seconds to wrap your story.
First of all, thanks for the pressure. I am losing 5 seconds now, but then I will touch on it. My version of alternate reality, DK comes up at number 6, stitches a good partnership with Manish Pandey, which places India in a much better position, but then he gets out in a dramatic fashion, playing the same shot, getting caught out in the deep. But then Vijay Shankar, along with Washington and Shardul, are able to finish the match for India. India wins. And that's my version. Over to you, Aziz.
My version diverges just a bit because Mustafizur gets in a bit early. There's still some work to do, and Vijay Shankar and Washington Sundar botch it up, and we lose the game. Shumo Sarkar has a decent career after it. DK doesn't command such big bucks, but still has a stable career out coming from IPL and plays a little less games that he did for India. Doesn't go to the World Cups. He has a terrible T20 World Cup record, by the way, but he saves it because he doesn't play in that T20 World Cup. That's our story, and that's a wrap, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys listen to this and do vote for us which of the versions you like more. You will probably see it on the Spotify poll as well if you use the application. We are available on all streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple. We will be publishing episodes every week, so tune in next week. And thank you all for listening, and wish you a nice week ahead.